really, really good sanding. I've gone to the trouble of taking a nail file and actually sanding in between each of the little window braces on both sides to give it a decent start, because it was so rough I couldn't have used that. So now I've got it as smooth as I like for this stage. I'm going to probably give it another sand before I put it back together anyway. So next stage is to put a first coat of paint on this, and the main issue I had was that the inside hadn't been painted either, or hadn't been finished or anything done with it. So like here you can see on the back the plywood was completely discoloured, so I've sanded that back a fair amount. It's nice and smooth and ready for painting, but you can still see some of the discoloration, so that would have been rather unpleasant for the inside of the box. And what I've also done is I've taken off the glass windows, because the glass that was on there was very, very thin anyway, and I was dubious about whether or not it would be safe. And if you're dropping in coins and moving it about, if you break the glass, it was so thin that it's going to go everywhere. So I'm going to replace that with some plexi or something like that, so it's at least safe for young people in general. Okay, so here goes. The insides I'm going to do black, so don't worry about those, but I need to make sure I get all the window frames all the way around. So I've given all these a coat of red on the outside and then black on the inside. It's still pretty rough, but it's going to have 3 or 4 more coats anyway. So I'm in the process of kind of rebuilding things, and I've come to notice that the join on the kind of the lid or the roof or whatever it is it's only about 1/4 of an inch wide, so it's been quite difficult to get back on. So I'm kind of doing it in sections and then sticking loads of tape on. I think once it's all fully dry and set, I'm going to go around with some epoxy or something a little stronger than PVA, just to make sure it stays where it's supposed to be. So I'm sticking on the last section here. I think because I'm gluing onto old glue joints, that's causing problems as well, so definitely going to need that kind of reinforcement. I really want to squeeze this in, but I don't want to move the other bits too much. I understand I'm going to need to do quite a bit of filling, I think, once this is set, but I'm going to have to do that all the way around anyway, because this wood is awful. It's really quite cheap, quite nasty wood. Just in the process of doing the initial sanding, I was finding holes that had just been covered on the surface with a little bit of a filler. So there's going to be a considerable amount of filling to do. I'm not too concerned about getting these perfectly square, because it just kind of sits flat on the top, so it doesn't really need to be absolutely dead on. I did the major part of gluing up last night, and I gave it a coat of filler over the whole thing, rubbed it in quite well, and I'm now just going to sand it back so it leaves a nice smooth finish, so you don't have any kind of wood grain showing through in the end. I'm still going to run some epoxy around the inside here, because that joint is there's a very small glue surface, so I'm going to help that out a bit. I'm just smoothing over the edges as well, because there was no real attempt at any kind of finishing on this. So you see, I've kept kind of the main body and the base separate, because I've got my lock on order, so that's going to be put in there before I attach it, because I'm not good enough to be able to get in from one direction. So all I've got to do now is a second coat of red and a little bit of black along the inside edges here. If that comes out very well. Okay, I don't know how well this is going to come out. The parents are doing the garden at the minute, so it's a little bit loud. So I've gone over with a coat of a mix of bronze, dark brown and crimson, and now I'm going to lighten it up a little bit using the same base mix, but adding some vermilion, which is quite a bold red. Okay, I've already fit the inside base, which is just on a pair of hinges and it just flaps in. because I don't want any coins to drop in and get in the way of the mechanism here. So I've got a second base that goes inside the bottom here, and that fits in fairly snug like that. So what I've done is I've lined up the lock against the side here with enough room for the tongue to come out. So at this point I've just lined it up and then marked the centre point of each of these holes, and then pressed down so that the little pin inside the lock registered on here, and then drew around the key on top of that pin register, so I've got a keyhole size there. So I've got here my little Dremel, so I'm going to make a couple of holes and then kind of fiddle around with it till I get the shape I like. Okay, so I've drawn and folded out my hole. It's a bit messy, but I'm going to paint that over in black and it shouldn't show so much. And always make sure that the key turns, it fits in and turns nicely. And I've lined this up so that I've got enough of the tongue poking up here to go roughly halfway through the frame of the base there, so it should have a good amount of lock on it. And when I'm screwing it on the base here, using fairly small brass screws, because they're that small I don't really do pilot holes, so it's easy just to use a little brass nail, a couple of taps just to make a starter hole, and then screw in from there. So I've attached the bottom door. It's a little bit tight. I don't intend to paint the base again, because it'll put paint on paint will just stay stuck. So I think just keeping it a little tight is better. So it does fit through nicely, just a slight catch. And what I've done, it comes out very well, is I've marked where the bolt slips in, and I've just used a craft knife at either end just to start the hole off really. So now it's back to the old Dremel and cutting out the slot. I don't mind if the slot overruns slightly because I can always fill that back in. So here we go. Okay, so I'm on to the last bit of construction now, so it's back to the epoxy. This stuff is quite cheap. It seems to work so far, but you don't seem to get that much in the tubes, which is aggravating. Certainly makes your head spin though. So what I've done is I've lined the windows with some acetate. I couldn't find any plexi that my equipment can cut at the minute, so that'll have to do. So I'm going to start with gluing on the base. And if I do it this way. So just going around, putting a decent amount around the edges. Together. Okay, I'm going to run a finger around the join just to get any squeeze out. It's going to be painted over on to leave it relatively neat. Now, I don't need it really with epoxy, but I'm leery about leaving it on its own, so I'm going to just a couple of bits of tape just to make sure that stays put. And then put the top on. This is already beginning to set, it's getting a little stringy. Difficult difficulty with this fast setting stuff. It does set very fast, so if you've got more than one thing to join, you've got a series of things to join, it does make it that much more difficult. Front. Wind up again. Finger round just to tidy up the glued edge. And a little bit more tape just to hold it. Okay, I left that overnight to dry, and then stuck some filler in, sanded it back, and covered that with a little bit of brown just to mask it a bit. Now I'm going to do the last coat of red on there, but first I'm going to finish off the little crown decal bit. I've stuck it onto some masking tape just on a bit of card here, and I've started with a black coat to give it some background. I'm going to put some gold on top just to pick things out. Okay, so coming up to the final stages now, so all I need to do is give it a last coat of red. This is a fabulous, very bright red, and I think it's slightly too bright, and the natural kind of transparency of acrylic means that it's not covered evenly, which is fine, but not to this extent. So one final coat of red and then the coat of varnish should be enough. So what I'm going to do is take some bright red, which is the same colour as it is on here, and I'm going to blend it with a very, very, very small amount of white. I'm not making a pink. What I'm doing is I'm removing the transparency, so it's fairly even enough to sit on the brush, and that will just blend in. It won't change the shade of the red necessarily. It'll just take away that transparent effect